I would like to start today with looking into what in the recent years has been common knowledge on how our industry, but especially banks with regards to their digitalization efforts, can innovate. And in that context also the question, why do we need a new way to innovate? I remember a lot of these conferences of the past 5 years, well actually not the last 2 years, but the years before that, where at least someone was talking about how can banks innovate. And in that context, basically 2 options were always discussed, buy and build. There is a third option that was discussed as well, which is partner. So for the sake of differentiating this new way from the existing ones, let's quickly define a common understanding what they mean. Buy is when you buy something existing off the shelf and you offer it to your clients either labeled or white labeled. You don't do any changes on it. You just take it exactly the way it was defined. Build is when you build something internally based on what is already existing in the bank. If I would be mean, I could add mostly on a very messy legacy system. And if you partner, you either invest in a fintech or a wealth tech in order for them to building their product according to your needs, or you even try to collaborate with them to build the product according to your needs. Now, we all know that there are multiple challenges with innovating, and especially with building. But a fact remains, banks like to build. And there are valid reasons for them to wanting to build their own offerings. If you think that your offering is so specific, no provider can cover all your requirements. If you think that you can build it cheaper and faster internally, and if you don't want to be dependent on any external third-party provider, you build. The reasons inside the bank for building are mostly very strong, and I personally understand them. The problem is, banks are usually very slow at building. Let me allow a slight deviation. A year ago, I had the very reasonable desire to bake my own macarons, Luxembourgale. I could have bought them, of course, but my reasons for making them myself were very strong. I had an exact picture in mind, how they should look like, how I wanted to decorate them, what color they should have, what color should be combined with what filling. And I knew who was the person that I wanted to give them to, and I knew what they liked. In addition to that, everybody told me it's very, very difficult to do, basically not doable, which of course even added to my motivation of doing it myself. This is me kneeling in front of the oven. I spent hours like this. On top of that, I also spent a lot of money on ingredients, and I probably got my first gray hair from that experience. So I don't expect that any of you is as foolish as I was trying to make your own macarons. But let me tell you a little something about baking macarons. Basically, every recipe tells you that the oven plays a critical role. You need to have a very precise heat, and there shouldn't be any airflows, otherwise your macarons get totally wasted. The second most important thing is the dough. More importantly, the egg white that makes up the consistency of the dough. So the recipes go as far as telling you exactly what age an egg should have in terms of when it has been laid, what exact amount of grams you need, and what temperature the egg should have. And don't get me started on measuring the temperature of an egg. I was as close as buying my own hens to do this thing. So, turns out, the oven was not the problem. Neither was the heat nor the airflows. The problem was the egg white. Turns also out that there was some freak in this world who was even more of a freak than I was, who spent hours, probably years, on creating a powder that could replace this egg white that gave the dough its perfect consistency. That means getting the base right. From that moment on, I was in baking heaven. I could add whatever color I wanted to my macarons. I was able to decorate them the way I wanted, and they turned out perfectly fine. So you were probably already guessing where I'm going with this. The moral of the story is, it is totally understandable that you want to build your own things. It's also doable, but you need to get the base right. And with the base, I don't mean the core banking the legacy systems, by the way. So in order to tackle some of these innovation challenges, and in order for you to build an individual specific offering, you should combine, buy, and build. In fact, leverage the years that someone has spent on that particular base and build your individual offering around it. That means create a hybrid system where you combine off-the-shelf external components with internal development. And what for? To unlock the power of creativity. Because a bank doesn't only want to individualize their front ends. You want to be able to play around, to create new things, without the constant hassle of bug fixing, stabilization, and innovation of the core. You want to play around and you want to create something that is yours, without having to buy something new whenever you come up with a new idea. Now, some of you might now say, well, that's not new, we've tried that, it worked very well. Then I would be very interested in hearing your story later on. Some of you might say, that's not new, we tried that, it doesn't work. Bear with me, there are some very important things when doing buy and build. Basically, there are two things that are critical if you want to build your individual specific offering with external third-party providers or around a third-party provider. First of all, you need to buy a solution that comes with a well-thought-through, intelligent API layer. Second, probably even more important, it needs to come with a BPMN engine or similar, Business Process Modeling and Network Engine. See, I know why I always say BPMN and not BP. That allows you to define the processes exactly the way you want them to work, optimally based on already existing process and workflow templates that are easy to adapt. You need to be able to think in client processes, and the technology you use needs to support you in doing so. That also means that you need to be able to divide the end journey into individual process parts with enough intersections between your existing systems and the external solution where things are transferred that you can adapt. Only modular, well thought through separations of the individual process parts will allow you to individualize the offering with little effort. So if you have a technology that allows you to think in complete journeys, but to individualize the process parts, only then will you be able to put your DNA, your fingerprint, into the customer interface that goes beyond the front end, that contains only your brand's colors and fonts. That also means that you can use multiple third-party provider products in your complete universe. What we usually would consider though is that it often makes strategically sense to look for one provider that has a broad spectrum but is flexible. Because with the right base, you can then smart shop around it without having to go for best of breed in all microscopic parts of your offering. So we've actually seen now in Switzerland and Germany some very, very interesting and creative offerings that have come out of this approach of buy and build. So the good news is you can all keep your building spirit, but with now the advantage of a faster way. Actually from an approximate average of 1 year down to 3 to 6 months. This is time saving of 50 to 75% without compromise on your core offering characteristics. Let me give you a quick example. A portfolio management system basically consists of 9 building blocks. You need a rebalancing mechanism, you need monitoring capabilities, you need investment guideline, portfolio construction, allocation checks, order management, risk profiling, risk engine, portfolio analytics. Now, think about these components and imagine that you are able to individualize the processes that steer these building blocks. You will actually be able to turn your portfolio management system into a crypto and digital asset platform, into a Säule 3a offering, into a personal CFO or financial planning tool, and you can even sell it B2B, wherever your creativity leads you to. That actually also applies to my egg white base. I can now use it to make perfect tiramisu, very nice white chocolate mousse bases, and so on. Thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to speaking to you later on.